welcome back to another edition of Nebraska Football Now. I'm your host, Andy Classen, once again joined by our Husker Insider, Jake Bartecki. Jake, how we doing?
We're doing well. It's the first show after a loss, so I think we've got some stuff to talk about. We'll see how Nebraska does on their first road trip of the season.
And you took me right to where we need to get to. We're flying so high, but kind of a reality check here for Husker Nation and the football team as a whole. We didn't make it to 4-0, so forget about 6-0, 7-0, all that chatter. What is your main takeaway, your reaction? I mean, there's some good things. Of course there's some good things. I just feel like there's such a sour note put on it the way it ended. Not only in regulation with the missed field goal, but I don't know if you could have had a worse overtime period.
Yeah, I think it's growing pains for Nebraska a little bit because you've got a freshman quarterback in there who I thought played a really great game. I thought Dylan Raiola was awesome. I thought the interception he threw was not on him. But you also had some problems on the offensive line, right? I mean, Turner Corcoran goes down. You're already down a lineman at the start of the year with Teddy Prohaska's knee injury. So you're really starting to rotate guys in there who may not have even expected to play that game. Gunnar Gatula and Grant Segrin. And obviously Henry Latovsky, who was in there for Corcoran originally when he was hurt last year. So I think you look at it from a perspective of Nebraska had a lot of things go wrong that they probably weren't expecting to have in that game. I thought Illinois' game plan was really good. I thought Nebraska got a little out-coached in terms of how Illinois adjusted to things. Yeah. So it's unfortunate, and obviously close games as well. I mean, Nebraska's 2-19 in their last 21 one-score games, and it's a problem that goes beyond when even Matt Rule was here.
Yeah, and some of the good things that we talked about in the preseason that quickly turned to bad was the depth at O-line. You touched on it there. We're talking about how deep we are, and we had all these young guys. Well, they're getting tested right away and getting thrown into the fire. Aside from overtime, I thought we saw some young guys come in and make some pretty good plays.
I thought so too, and I think one of the spots that I really saw that was Sierra Wright on the defensive side of things. I mean, Tommy Hill goes down with a plantar fascia issue, and he has to go to the locker room, and he's in street clothes for the rest of the game. Sierra Wright came in. I thought he did a great job, had that strip sack of Luke Altmaier that probably kept Illinois off the scoreboard. I mean, they were putting together a pretty nice-looking drive. So obviously he's a transfer from USC. I thought he looked really good in that game. And then, young guys, old guys, thought they all looked good. I mean, Dylan Raiola obviously is one of the young guys who I thought looked good. And he spread the ball around to a few of his receivers as well with Isaiah Nayor and Jamal Banks. I mean, 10 different guys caught passes from a lot of different ages. Ja'Cory Barney, Janiron Bonner scored a touchdown. So I thought the young guys played well, and I thought Dylan Raiola did a nice job dispersing the ball out to them.
Well, we heard some of your thoughts, heard some of mine. Let's hear from the head man himself, Coach Rule, from his latest presser.
The disappointing thing was overtime was obviously it was not nearly good enough. It was a debacle, right? But at the end of the day, it's just a missed assignment. It's not like we're not good. That's my message to our guys. Like, they blitz the linebacker up the middle, the tailback doesn't pick it up, and you can't win these games doing that. You can't win these games false starting.
Well, all righty, Jake, you heard it from the man himself. He didn't see all that many good things. We already touched on how we thought we saw some good things. Is Coach Rule just, trying to be a little too hard on his guys? Is that how he's motivating them? What do you kind of make of all that?
I think he's being honest. I think he's giving us exactly what he thinks. I mean, he called overtime a debacle, which I think it was. I mean, you give up a couple of sacks, and we talked about it early. Maybe the offensive line was a little worn down, but there were a lot of poorly executed plays on both sides of the football in overtime. Missed assignment, as he talked about, that allowed that long run, and then it was an easy 6 points for Illinois after that.
Yeah, I mean, when you go into overtime and you go negative 38 yards on offense and you allow them to score in 2 plays on defense, it's really hard to find the positive on that. But we'll go back to a positive, and I'm going to talk about the receivers. We saw a lot of good plays being made. Raiola looks like an upperclassman. His accuracy, his ability to put the ball where only his guy can make a play. At times, that offense was clicking against Illinois, a good Illinois defense.
And I agree. I thought that he did a nice job spreading the ball. You started to see Thomas Fidone make an impact. But what I really liked, and this was a question for a while, was where were Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nayor? Where were these two transfer-in wide receivers that were battle-tested, that had big seasons in the past? They showed up. I mean, they showed up in the UTEP game to a degree, but I thought this is the game where they really look like them and Raiola were on the same page. You had 94 yards for Jamal Banks. You had 90 yards and 2 touchdowns for Isaiah Nayor. The one bad part, you got to come down with that football that got wrestled away.
let's hear from offensive coordinator Satterfield, because he made a point to talk about this during the presser as well.
We have to fight for the ball. There's no other option. If the ball hits you in the hands, you have to come down with the ball. That's twice it's been wrestled away from us, and again, that's not being treated lightly. You go get the ball.
Okay, Jake, I think we're all in lockstep here with the OC. You got to battle, and you got to come down with the ball. Regardless if you're a redshirt freshman, upperclassman, you got to secure the catch.
He didn't mince words about it, and I understand why. I mean, that's 2 weeks in a row. Northern Iowa and a ball to Jalen Lloyd in the fourth quarter, and a long pass to Isaiah Noor. Both of them were the kind of balls that we've talked about from Dylan Raiola, that they're 50-50 balls, but they're 50-50 in the respect that it's 50% your wide receiver is going to come down with it, or 50% it's going to fall incomplete. Because the wide receivers didn't go to the ground with it strong, they went up and grabbed it strongly, but they didn't go to the ground with both hands on the football, that takes that away. And that leads it to a 50-50, probably falls incomplete or goes to the defender on the interception. And that's exactly what we saw 2 weeks in a row. If the defender doesn't pick it off, it's a great ball that's thrown to a drop.
Yeah, exactly. And you need to make those plays, especially if you're a team like Nebraska that's trying to get over that hump. We're so close.
Right.
And it's just so tough where you had 2 plays at the end of regulation. Well, Nebraska's last offensive stance there where the pass was just a little long, and that was Raiola's 4th read on the play. It was just amazing he was able to buy himself that much time in that amount of time, put a ball out there just out of reach, and then a backup kicker missed a 39-yard field goal. It felt like rinse, repeat, same old Nebraska. How do you think the coaching staff and the players as a whole can get over that hump and can get beyond that? Because as a fan base, we're all saying, here we go again.
Right. Well, you brought up the throw to Luke Lindenmeyer on the late in the game play, and I think that was a great play call. Personally, I thought America Satterfield drew up a great play, but I think you run that, in my opinion, if you're not going to run it with Thomas Fidone, run it with Carter Nelson or Heinrich Harburg, guys that are a little quicker, because I don't think Lindenmeyer quite had the speed to get to that ball. And Marcus Satterfield said, well, it was the angle that he ran. Maybe, but I think with a quicker receiver, that might have been 6 points. We probably feel a lot different today. But yeah, I mean, getting over the hump, I think it's a hard thing for Nebraska right now to do because they don't have much experience playing with the lead. I mean, Nebraska has not had, at least this group of players, has not had a ton of experience being the team to control the game late. They've usually been the chaser.
Flipping the script now over to the defensive side, we saw signs of it during the Northern Iowa game where it's like, okay, these are sustained drives over 8, 9 plays. They can't get off the field. We saw the exact same thing against Illinois. 8, 9-play drives resulting in scores. There wasn't a 3-and-out. There was a couple takeaways, good, but there was no traditional 3-and-out. I just think that's so critical for a defense, especially in the second half. You're trying to salt away a victory. You're trying to, get your offense back on the field. You need to make those stops, and we just haven't seen it from Nebraska the last couple of weeks.
Tony White brought up a great point about this, is the offense was great. I mean, Dylan Raiola went out there and got not only Dylan Raiola, but the entire offense went out there and got you 24 points. You got to help your offense out at some point. And they did. I mean, they got that turnover that you mentioned. John Bullock strips the receiver, and Nebraska goes down and score. It was Nayor's first touchdown. But yeah, I mean, it's not something that you really can work on in practice other than putting yourself in those situations of third down and medium and making sure you can get off the field. And I think Tony White mentioned that this week in media availability, that's really the only way you can do it. And Nebraska's just got to get better at those situations.
So if we kind of, take a step back, it's been a couple days, right? Nebraska's 3-1. It's not all bad.
No.
There's really some good signs here, especially for some youngsters, some redshirt freshmen, true freshmen making plays, already having an impact. And I think if you talk to a lot of Husker fans, even the national pundits, 3-1 Nebraska to start the season, first 4 games, that's probably where they're expected to be. Has anything changed for you with, Indiana, Iowa, Purdue still looming?
Sure. When I looked at the schedule, I didn't know which game it would be, but I thought Nebraska would be 6-1 heading to Ohio State. And the games I circled were Illinois, Rutgers, and Indiana. And for different reasons. Illinois, I just figured this is a team that has had Nebraska's number. Brett Bielema has got a really great track record against the Huskers. I thought Indiana looked really good, and they have. They can score a lot of points, and Rutgers has usually got a pretty good defense, and it just sort of feels like a little scary game. So for me, the expectation doesn't change a ton in terms of the first half of the season. Now, what I will say with some of those teams you mentioned, I don't consider Purdue to be that big of a threat, but it's still a road game, and you got your freshman quarterback going on the road for the first time. But I think Nebraska's schedule looks much tougher than what it looked like when it came out in March last spring. I think when it came out in March, we were all thinking, easy, 7-0, get to Ohio State, big stage, we're back. Right. I think right now, Illinois is now ranked in the top 20, and I think they can put up a fight against Penn State this weekend. Indiana, they look scary. They've been able to score some points. That could be a big noon kickoff game. Yeah. And Rutgers has looked a lot better than they have. So I think the first half of the schedule has actually become tougher than it once seemed.
You started to talk about Purdue. That's where our focus needs to be. It's going to be an extra day, after a Friday kickoff. When that line opened up and, on our WTL radio show I host, we're always talking point spreads, right? Opened at 9.5, Nebraska favorite on the road. And I thought, oh, wow, over 2 scores already. And then it got bet up overnight to 10.5. So that tells you on the national scale and the people that, kind of make and break, their payroll there, they're thinking Nebraska's going to win by 2 scores. How do you kind of measure that up? And the expectation not really wavering, not changing for Nebraska.
Well, I think it could be a situation where Nebraska does pull away. I can see that, but I also think this is a game that Nebraska could find themselves in a close one again with. And if you listen to Matt Rule this week, he said every game is going to be like this. Every game is going to be a battle, and that's just playing in the Big Ten. What Purdue does well, and I think this could cause some trouble for Dylan Raiola, they're ranked 9th right now in pass defense in the nation. And we talked about how good Dylan Raiola was with spreading the ball around different pass catchers and to Nayor and to Jamal Banks. Yeah. That's going to have to be the case again. And on the flip side, Devin Mockabee's a really good running back for the Boilermakers. So Ryan Walters, I think, has some things going for him. They've had some tough games. Obviously, Notre Dame, they got blown out of the water. And I think that was...
Notre Dame got beat the week before. That was a tough scenario.
Exactly. That was the let's get back game and make an example out of Purdue. I think they're better than they showed in that game. They also average over 180 rushing yards on the ground, and we've seen Nebraska have some trouble stopping the run, as you talked about, with those long drives. So I think I see it both ways. I could see how Nebraska pulls this one out and gets ugly a little bit, but I also could see it be a game that comes down to the end. I don't really know where my prediction is yet.
Yeah, because Purdue just does those couple of things that you talk about. They've always had good, dynamic players on offense. You mentioned the running back. And then on defense, they do just enough to cause some problems for a young quarterback. I want to turn this back to Nebraska real quick. I felt when Tony White's defense was at its best, let's say early last year, they were blitzing out. They were bringing up these exotic pressures, a lot of twists up front. Yeah. Now they're trying to play this bend, don't break, and I just don't think it suits Nebraska that way. That's just my personal opinion. I would rather get beat on a blitz and say, well, at least we tried, rather than just sit back and take it for 8 or 9 plays. I think that's demoralizing for the defense. Yeah. And it didn't look good against Northern Iowa, and it really didn't look good at home for the 400 sellout against Illinois. What do you think of that assessment, or am I just way off base? Should we just keep playing the bend, don't break type of defense with the 3-3 stack philosophy?
Right. Well, I think we've talked about this on the show in the past. Nebraska's got such a great front 3 and 4. Butler, Hutmaker, Robinson, M.J. Sherman,
old
John
guys,
veterans and guys who can really cause some problems. I don't think the pass rush played to their best against Illinois, and I think you bring more pressure on a team like Purdue that has some younger guys on the offensive line. I think things go better. But Nebraska, as you talked about with those 8 and 9 play drives, sometimes if you just have one missed assignment, that's a touchdown right there. Sometimes you want to get the opposition off the field as quickly as you can with a 3 and out. And that's why Matt Rule's always said he likes to defer, get the offense out there second after they've got all the momentum from a defensive 3 and out. So I would fully think if you asked Tony White, he would probably say he wants his group to get the offense off the field as fast as they can because, as we mentioned, you leave them on there longer and that leads to problems.
Yeah, be aggressive, force the issue, those type of things. And it kind of allows the players to play a more – when my playing days, it was a more fun brand of football where you're getting after it a little bit more rather than letting the offense kind of dictate towards you. So you mentioned you're not exactly sure. You know, Purdue does so many good things, but I'm going to try and pull it out of you here. Let's get a prediction. Are you going to say Nebraska wins but doesn't cover? That kind of seems to be the cop-out right now.
I was going to say they actually do cover. I'll
Okay.
say 28-17 Nebraska. I think the offense will have another nice day. I think Devin Mockabee will probably put together a few long drives for Purdue, but we'll roll with 28-17 Nebraska.
Love it. Jake, thank you for your time and sharing all that wonderful information with us.
You bet.
And thank you for joining us on another Nebraska Football Now.